Everyone at the firm knew her name. Cassandra didn't just lead, she defined precision, results, and control. Her heels echoed through the hallways like a ticking clock, always ahead of schedule, always in command. She had no time for distractions, let alone for the quiet man who swept the corners no one looked at. Daniel, the janitor, blended in with the paint on the walls. No one remembered when he started, and no one asked. He moved through the building like a ghost, unnoticed, unfelt, unimportant. Cassandra only noticed him when things were out of place. A missed spot. A trash bin full when it shouldn't be. That's when she saw him, head down, sleeves rolled, mop in hand. No words. No excuse. Just a quiet nod and back to work. It was almost robotic. Efficient, emotionless. She appreciated that. People who didn't speak didn't ask for more. But something changed. She began seeing patterns. He started leaving earlier. Not once or twice, but frequently. She'd find his area already cleaned well before his shift ended. At first, she dismissed it. Maybe he was fast, maybe he needed the hours elsewhere. But she didn't like variables. Unchecked routines made her uncomfortable. What disturbed her more was the sense of intent behind his timing. It wasn't laziness, it felt like a hidden schedule. Then came the night he forgot his keys. Left dangling at the security desk, as if he was distracted. Cassandra happened to be working late. She picked up the keys. It was unlike him. He never made mistakes. And for the first time, a question surfaced in her mind. Who was he, really? Why did someone so invisible seem to live by such strict timing? She didn't ask him directly. That wasn't her way. Instead, the next time he walked out early, precisely 6:17 p.m., she followed. Not like a detective. Just casually, from a distance. She didn't even know what she expected to find. A second job? A bar? A girlfriend? Maybe she was looking for a reason to discipline him. Or maybe, deep down, she was simply curious. His route was strange. He didn't head toward any business district. He drove into the older part of town, where streetlights flickered and sidewalks cracked from neglect. It was quiet, almost forgotten. He parked near a tired building that looked like a daycare center. Through her windshield, she watched as he entered and moments later emerged, holding the hand of a little girl, no older than 7. She ran into his arms. He lifted her with care only a parent could give. Her arms wrapped around his neck like she hadn't seen him in days. They walked toward a small grocery store. Cassandra stayed in the car. She wasn't ready to be seen. Daniel came out with 2 bags, apples, juice boxes, canned food. Budget groceries. Nothing fancy. He placed the bags gently in the back seat, adjusted his daughter's seatbelt, and drove off again. Cassandra followed at a careful distance. He wasn't going home. Not yet. The next stop stunned her. A public library, nearly empty this late in the evening. He took his daughter inside. Cassandra hesitated, then parked. She waited. Minutes passed. The lights inside glowed softly. She approached quietly and peeked through the glass. There he was, seated at a table, his daughter beside him, crayons in hand. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't relaxing. He was helping her read aloud, correcting her gently, with patience in his eyes she'd never seen at the office. After a while, he moved to a corner computer station. His daughter colored quietly while Daniel opened a laptop, old, scratched, slow, and began typing like a man on a mission. Cassandra couldn't see what was on the screen, but she could tell from the rhythm of his fingers that this wasn't idle browsing. It was work. Focused. Intense. He adjusted code, wrote long lines, switched between windows. She stood frozen, watching a janitor type like a developer on deadline. It didn't make sense. Nothing about it made sense. For the first time in years, Cassandra couldn't define what she was looking at. Not an employee. Not a worker she could categorize. Just a man living a life far deeper than what his uniform suggested. The man who swept floors by day was someone entirely different after sunset. Someone who mattered in a way she had never considered. She turned back to her car, mind spinning. The keys in her hand felt heavier now. They weren't just for rooms and doors. Tonight, they had unlocked a reality she never thought to question. The next day at work, Cassandra couldn't focus. Numbers blurred, meetings dragged, and for the first time, her immaculate schedule felt irrelevant. She had seen something she couldn't unsee, a glimpse into a world that didn't match her assumptions. Daniel was no longer a blank space in her building. He was a puzzle, a contradiction, and most of all, a man living two lives without ever asking for attention. When the evening came, she found herself doing it again. No plan, no explanation. She waited. Right on time, Daniel clocked out and headed to his car. She followed from a distance, cautious and quiet, unwilling to confront but unable to turn away. The route was different, longer, winding through darker streets. He stopped at a faded community hall lit by a single flickering bulb. Inside, Cassandra could barely make out the outlines of folding chairs, old posters, and a whiteboard covered in handwritten notes. Daniel stood in the center, speaking to a small group of children, no more than 10. Ages varied, their clothes worn but eyes attentive. He was teaching. Not lecturing, engaging. He used props, jokes, and even let the kids challenge him with questions. They responded with ease, like this wasn't the first time. What caught Cassandra off guard wasn't just that he taught, but how well he did it. There was structure in his chaos, clarity in every word. The kids weren't just listening, they were learning. Not distracted. Not bored. Fully present. He handed them printed worksheets, then walked around checking their progress like a seasoned instructor. This wasn't a hobby. It was a system. Then something unexpected happened. One of the kids tugged his sleeve, whispered something. Daniel nodded, disappeared for a minute, then returned with 3 wrapped meals from his car. Cassandra realized what she was witnessing. He wasn't just teaching, he was feeding. Supporting. Filling every role left empty by circumstances these kids didn't choose. He was doing more as one person than most teams managed together. After the lesson ended, Daniel packed up. The kids hugged him like family before scattering into the night. Cassandra stayed still. Her world was made of formal processes, HR guidelines, and merit-based metrics. Daniel's world was built on instinct, need, and love. He didn't have a grant. No donations, no PR campaign. Just a man showing up, every night, giving what little he had without expecting return. She followed again, just once more, hoping to understand what drove him. This time, Daniel returned to a small apartment. The hallway light was out, paint peeling, door creaked open. Inside, he helped his daughter get ready for bed, brushing her hair with a softness that didn't match the calluses on his hands. Then, once she was asleep, he returned to his laptop. Now Cassandra could see it more clearly. Lines of code, interface mockups, a learning application. Basic design, but efficient. He navigated tabs, adjusted layouts, tested features. It wasn't a hobby project. It was an actual platform, one built for access, for children with no internet, no expensive devices. Offline compatibility, simple navigation, visual-heavy modules. Cassandra recognized the complexity masked under that simplicity. Daniel wasn't guessing. He knew what he was doing. He cross-referenced educational standards, input age-appropriate content, debugged errors manually. It was the kind of work she paid entire teams to produce, and here it was, being built at a kitchen table under a single flickering bulb. Her chest tightened with something unfamiliar, not guilt, not pity, but respect. He had no audience, no applause. Only a reason, his daughter, and kids like her. While others pitched ideas in conference rooms, Daniel was solving real problems with nothing but perseverance. She returned home late, mind buzzing. Her office, once a place of certainty, now felt hollow. She sat in her chair, opened her laptop, and couldn't stop thinking about how his interface flowed better than the prototype her developers had submitted just last week. The next morning, she didn't request a meeting or send an email. She simply opened the company's learning software and compared it, side by side, with Daniel's build. The difference wasn't technical. It was emotional. His had heart. His had purpose. And suddenly, all the polished metrics she once lived by seemed meaningless. Daniel wasn't asking for a promotion. He wasn't asking for anything. But what he built, quietly, hidden from every boardroom and chart, had the power to do what her company claimed to stand for. The only difference was, he didn't need a mission statement to mean it. Cassandra spent the next 2 days reviewing Daniel's app in private. She dissected its structure, tested every module, and explored its back end with increasing disbelief. The architecture was functional, scalable, and incredibly efficient. It had none of the corporate polish, yet it offered something more valuable: immediacy and purpose. The features weren't theoretical. They were born from real-world limitations. Offline learning, lightweight size, visual-based instruction for low-literacy users. She saw intentionality in every element, not just design, but empathy. She couldn't reconcile it. Daniel, a janitor with no visible support system, had created a platform that solved problems her salaried developers hadn't even understood. And he did it between shifts, late at night, while raising a daughter alone. She needed answers, not out of suspicion anymore, but necessity. She authorized access to his HR file. It was thin. No incidents, no complaints, barely even vacation days. His background revealed a partial university education in computer science. No graduation date. Digging deeper, she discovered he'd dropped out nearly a decade ago after the sudden death of his wife. Financial records suggested he took whatever work he could get while caring for his newborn. No upward career shifts. Just quiet endurance. Cassandra sat in silence, reading that file over and over. A brilliant mind stalled by tragedy, overlooked by systems built to reward loud ambition. Yet he hadn't stopped. He simply adjusted. He worked in the background, quietly holding his responsibilities with both hands while building something extraordinary when no one was watching. That evening, her developers pitched their quarterly progress. Half-complete modules, redundant tools, and nothing close to the user functionality she saw in Daniel's app. They spoke in jargon, emphasized technical constraints, and left no space for end-user context. Cassandra didn't argue. She listened, nodded, and ended the meeting early. Then she opened her laptop and, without announcement, began comparing. The contrast was glaring. Daniel's design anticipated the learner's confusion. His platform used interactive feedback where others gave static pages. He built an audio guidance for kids without literate parents. Every choice was deliberate. She knew what she had to do, but didn't know how to approach it. Recognition without patronization. Involvement without exploitation. She made one quiet gesture. Using internal channels, she routed a refurbished laptop to Daniel anonymously, packaged as a discarded office device. It had better specs and wouldn't crash under testing loads. She added a note in block text. No strings attached. Just keep going. No signature. No clue. But Daniel accepted it. The following night, he used the new machine without question. Cassandra watched through anonymized traffic logs. His workflow accelerated. Upload times improved. Interface refinements became more frequent. It confirmed her belief. He wasn't struggling with ideas, only tools. And now, with a little better equipment, his potential expanded quickly. Meanwhile, she initiated a shadow evaluation. Without informing anyone, she asked a small internal team to beta test Daniel's build against their own software. Results came back unambiguous. Faster adoption. Higher retention. Smoother UI experience. Zero marketing budget, yet better response rates and focus groups. Cassandra didn't disclose the source. She only filed it under priority evaluation. Her obsession grew quiet, but urgent. Daniel still arrived early, left without a word, swept floors no one appreciated. But Cassandra now saw a man whose day job existed only to support a deeper calling. He didn't need recognition. He needed space to build, stability to breathe. She wanted to speak to him, but something stopped her. Maybe respect. maybe caution. His silence wasn't born of shyness, it was protection. Life had taught him to shield his purpose behind labor no one questioned. To expose that would be to interfere with a system he had carefully balanced. So she waited. Not passively, but intentionally. Watching patterns, understanding what support looked like without interference. Every night, Daniel coded. Every line brought his vision closer. Cassandra saw in him a discipline she had never expected from someone labeled unskilled. He had no team, no meetings, no investors. Just a goal and the will to reach it. One morning, after a late session, Daniel left his notebook behind in the break room. Cassandra, passing through, noticed it. Not out of curiosity, out of instinct. She picked it up to return it, but her eyes caught the first page. Wireframes. Learning module sketches. Notes and margins about child psychology, user friction, and simplified reward loops. This wasn't a side project. It was a blueprint for scalable education. And it was nearly complete. Cassandra realized then that she'd spent years surrounded by polished talent, yet the most important innovation her company had seen was hiding in a man whose badge labeled him maintenance. The timing couldn't have been worse. Cassandra's company was on the verge of closing a multi-million-dollar deal involving an education contract with the city. Their in-house app, the centerpiece of the bid, had underperformed in recent pilot tests. Bugs persisted. Feedback from trial schools had been lukewarm. The board expected a revised pitch in 3 days. The team was tense, scrambling, and uninspired. Cassandra didn't announce her next move. She simply copied Daniel's application onto a clean device, stripped all metadata, and submitted it anonymously into the internal review system for comparison testing. She wanted no bias, no names, just data. Within hours, her analysts were flagging the new app as exceptionally intuitive. User flow was natural. Engagement time doubled. Drop-off rate was negligible. Even non-tech staff remarked it. Just made sense. At the executive table, she presented results. No preamble. Just side-by-side metrics. Her team assumed it was a competitor's build. Suggestions poured in, licensing it, copying its structure, offering a merger. Finally, someone asked where it came from. Cassandra answered without hesitation. It was built by our janitor. The room fell silent. Smirks appeared, followed by uncomfortable laughter. She didn't flinch. This app, which you assumed came from an external vendor, was developed after hours, off the clock, by someone earning minimum wage and raising a child alone. Disbelief lingered. Objections followed. Risk. Legality. Reputation. But Cassandra shut them down. She wasn't asking for permission. She was giving notice. She moved fast. Daniel was called into her office the next morning. Confused but calm, he assumed it was about cleaning schedules. Cassandra didn't waste time. She told him she'd reviewed his work. Not just once, but thoroughly. She knew about the app, the nightly tutoring, the community sessions. She'd seen his vision, tested its impact, and now she needed his help. Daniel's reaction was quiet, almost resistant. He wasn't used to recognition, and the sudden spotlight made him uneasy. Cassandra reassured him. No press, no exposure, just opportunity. A team, a salary he deserved, and resources to scale his platform properly. She offered full autonomy. Daniel looked hesitant. I've never led a team, he said. Cassandra replied. You've led kids with no promise of reward. That's harder than leading engineers. They reached an agreement. He would consult initially, retain control of the platform's core design, and be given flexibility to work on his own terms. His daughter's schooling would be fully sponsored. Cassandra ensured his community program would remain funded, independent of profit models. This wasn't charity. It was an investment in competence that had proven itself quietly. The shift was immediate. Developers who once ignored Daniel were now studying his logic. His code wasn't flashy, it was clean, direct, and user-minded. He rejected unnecessary complexity. When asked how he thought of certain features, he simply said, "I watch how kids struggle, then remove the struggle." His input reframed entire meetings. Instead of talking features, teams discussed barriers. Daniel emphasized devices with cracked screens, slow connections, distracted minds. His experience grounded the project. Cassandra observed the culture change. No more inflated ideas. Just real-world thinking, real results. 3 days later, they presented to the city. Daniel didn't speak. He didn't need to. The demo did it for him. Officials saw students navigate the app effortlessly. Teachers praised its adaptability. Parents noticed engagement at home without needing to intervene. The deal closed. The city signed on. Cassandra's company secured the contract, and a reputation for innovation rooted in empathy. Daniel didn't celebrate publicly. He returned to his usual schedule, arriving early, helping without asking. Cassandra, however, made one permanent change. She removed his name from the janitorial roster and assigned him a new title, Education Systems Architect. No press release. No ceremony. Just a quiet line in the directory that now reflected the truth. The board, once skeptical, came around. Not because of optics, but because the product worked. Better than anything before it. Daniel's work didn't just serve underserved kids, it reshaped the company's approach to building with purpose. For Cassandra, the experience forced reflection. She had once prided herself on talent scouting, but had overlooked the man cleaning her office each night while crafting a revolution in silence. Now she knew better. Greatness doesn't always knock. Sometimes it sweeps floors quietly, waiting for someone to notice the brilliance beneath the dust. Daniel didn't change much on the surface. He still wore simple clothes, still arrived early, and still greeted people with the same quiet nod. But his role had shifted, and slowly, so did everything around him. His title had changed, but more importantly, so had his place. He now led from the same humility he always carried, only now with tools that matched his capacity. His work wasn't guided by competition or deadlines, it was driven by need. He didn't chase applause. He stayed behind the scenes, focused on refining features that reflected how real children learned. Every update he pushed had a purpose. He built sound alerts for visually impaired users, interactive modules that adapted in real time to student performance, and dashboards for teachers with zero training. Everything stemmed from watching where children stumbled and designing solutions that caught them mid-fall. Cassandra watched him work, never intervening. Her leadership had shifted too. She stopped prioritizing polished proposals and started rewarding lived experience. She created a recruitment initiative specifically designed to identify hidden talent across departments. Security guards, cafeteria workers, drivers, anyone with ideas was given a space to submit them anonymously and receive mentorship if their work showed potential. It wasn't charity. It was efficiency with soul. Daniel's app expanded quickly. Pilots rolled out across 3 school districts. Feedback poured in, consistently glowing. Student scores improved. Dropout rates declined. Parents reported their children were voluntarily spending more time learning. And still, Daniel remained quietly grounded, deflecting credit and focusing only on what needed fixing next. A year passed. Cassandra was invited to speak at a national tech and education summit. She declined and instead nominated someone else to go in her place. A soft-spoken 9-year-old girl stepped onto the stage. Daniel's daughter. She wore a blue dress, held a note card in trembling hands, and faced a room full of executives. With composure beyond her years, she spoke simply. "My dad didn't build this app for money or awards. He built it because I didn't understand math, and he didn't want me to feel left behind. He said every kid should get help, even if they don't know how to ask for it." Silence swept the room. No presentation, no graphs. Just a truth so clear it didn't require elaboration. That speech spread across social media within hours. Not for its production value, but because it was unmistakably real. The app's downloads surged. Donations to community learning centers increased. Districts that once resisted tech initiatives now requested partnerships. None of it was marketed. It simply moved from one person to another, because people trust what feels honest. Cassandra doubled down. She didn't rebrand the company. She recalibrated its mission. The product team restructured their framework around Daniel's original blueprint. The firm moved away from deadlines imposed by trend forecasts and focused on lived data from classrooms. They started listening more and talking less. Daniel never used his new income for luxury. He bought new shoes for his daughter, upgraded her study desk, and quietly restored the community center where he once taught. On weekends, he still volunteered. Not because he had to, but because that's where the heartbeat of his work lived. The app wasn't a career move. It was an extension of who he was. Colleagues who once overlooked him now sought his feedback. Not for approval, but for perspective. They'd ask, "Does this solve a real problem?" He'd answer only if he believed they truly wanted to know. His respect wasn't handed out easily, it had to be earned through sincerity. At the year-end company gathering, Cassandra stood before her employees and told a story. Not about profit margins or projections, but about the days she followed a janitor without knowing why. She spoke about what she found: commitment, brilliance, and a kind of strength that didn't announce itself. Then she ended with a sentence that defined the entire transformation. "We built many things over the years, but our most valuable discovery was not a product, it was a person we failed to see." Daniel didn't stand up. He didn't wave. He sat near the back, hands folded, eyes steady. Recognition didn't move him. Impact did. And in every student who smiled at their screen, every parent who breathed easier knowing their child had a chance, his work lived quietly, changing lives the same way it began, without fanfare, just purpose.